Violence with guns is not the leading cause of death of American children. That is a lie. I'll prove it to you next on 95.3 MNC. I came on. But I wanted to start today's show with something that I did yesterday, but I'm going to do it in more detail. And the reason that I wanted to do this is there's still a massive amount of people who are buying into this because, once again, you are forced to make a choice between two potential outcomes. One, your news media in general and at large is either lying to you or incredibly lazy. And I don't know which one it is. I'm sure it kind of like fluctuates and there's some variance there. There's obviously some really good news outfits out there. There's some really good people who work for some bad news outfits out there. There's bad people who work for good news outfits. You get the gist, right? It's a big industry. But I wanted to go over this statement, and this week there will be a fake news flash on it. But I wanted to go over this statement that's been out there that guns are the number one killer of American children now, and that this has never happened before. This is only a 2020 thing, and I told you yesterday why that wasn't true in the 5 o'clock hour. What I didn't do is I didn't go into the actual statistics. And the reason I didn't do that is, well, frankly, I didn't have time, okay? The show had some things happen that got me behind at the beginning with the breaking news at the top of the show, so we kind of lost 40 minutes or so that I was planning on working around that. So today what I wanted to do is I wanted to take an opportunity, and I wanted to go over the actual data. And what is important is that everybody understands that this data comes from the Center for Disease Control. The CDC is the purveyor of this data that everybody is using. And this started going viral on TikTok because, once again, activist groups are using TikTok. For those of you out there who are like, TikTok's stupid, blah, blah, that's where your kids and grandkids are. So your kids and grandkids right now are being inundated with a bunch of viral TikToks that have been paid and promoted by anti-gun rights groups. And they are targeting your kids and your grandchildren. So they're getting this information from TikTok. You know TikTok is a useless place for information. I know it's a useless place for information, but that doesn't mean anything. That's where they're getting their information from. And I'm sorry, but when you have a very influential TikTok star, air quote, TikTok star, showing a chart from the CDC that says guns are the number one killer of kids, that's very powerful for somebody to see in 30 seconds. So they look at this and they go, oh my gosh, gun violence is out of control. Okay, it's not true. It's not accurate. It's a lie. And it's an intentional deception designed to steer the gun control debate. It is an intentional deception designed to scare lots of people, and it has fooled millions. And you have to understand who is in the executive right now. And you also have to go back in history, go back to how Obama politicized the CDC, right? The CDC got politicized under Obama. They started doing, gun crime stats. All of their research came back debunking the left-wing anti-gun narrative. So they just kind of swept them under the rug and they pretended they didn't exist after their research came back. So now they're trying it again. Yesterday, what I did is I told you how they were getting to this magical statistic that somehow gun violence in the United States has now surpassed automobile accidents for the leading cause of death for children in the United States. The simple answer is they included 18 and 19-year-olds, and they included suicides, which is a very dishonest way of presenting this data. Gun violence is not suicide. Gun violence is somebody used a firearm to murder somebody, and that the person being murdered was not a bad guy, but an innocent person, or there was some mutual bad guy combat happening, like gang warfare. And it is imperative that you understand how they manipulate this data. We've talked about how Everytown for Gun Safety routinely lies about these things every single year. We've already gone over, and we did this again yesterday, but we have to do a fact check on this probably 3 or 4 times a year. Every now and then something happens, and there becomes a massive sort of a story push on the number of mass school shootings that have happened this year. So the current narrative is that there's 27 mass school shootings that have happened in the United States this year. There hasn't been 27. There's been 1. and it's Uvalde, Texas. There hasn't been more than that. But what they do is they take shootings that happened near the school, counts as a school shooting. Shootings that happened at extracurricular activities when school wasn't in session, like at 8 o'clock at night, a football game. That gets counted as a school shooting. Individuals who committed suicide in the school counts as a school shooting. And they all get counted under mass school shooting. Stuff that happens in the parking lot. Stuff that happens in the parking lot on a Saturday. All of these things. That's how they add them into the data. We've talked about this before. Guntown, Guntown's a different one than Everytown. Everytown is the big one. Everytown has been caught manipulating this data for years. Okay, this is something that is well known. People in the constitutional side of the argument understand this. The vast majority of people just going about their day don't know that they manipulate the data this way. All they know is they flipped on the TV and they saw Brett Baer on Fox News the other day go, "Oh my God, there's been 27 school shootings in this country this year." It's not true. There's been one. There's been 13 mass school shootings in the United States since 1966. That's it. I'm not saying that each one of those isn't a tragedy. One is too many. And I'm not saying that anybody who is shot at school is not a tragedy. It certainly is. But if you're going to lie about the data, if anybody lies about the data, that means they know that they're wrong. And they're intentionally deceiving you to try and push a narrative because they want a political policy position. That's what this is about. So your average news media, as I've highlighted before, yes, there are many of them who are just deceptive. That is true. They're lying to you because they have an agenda. Most of the news media in the United States, folks, is just lazy. That's all there is to it. They don't know how to look at scientific research. They don't know where to go find the scientific research. They don't know how to look at the CDC's data. They don't know where to go to look at the CDC's data. By the way, you can find the CDC's actual data in 2 locations. Now, if you go to a news article, they will simply tell you the CDC says this, and if they provide a link, they'll link to a CDC article. What they won't do is actually link you to the data, and you can get the data in 2 different places. The one that I recommend, which is the easiest one to navigate, is the Whisker system, and that's WISQARS. The CDC Whisker system will allow you to go through all causes of death by age group, by year. You can basically, as long as you plug in 3 causes of death, you can come up with any chart that you want. And this is all of their data, okay? So as we highlighted yesterday, what they had to do to get to that number was to add in 18-year-olds, add in 19-year-olds, and then add in suicides by firearm. So if, God forbid, a teenager committed suicide with a gun, they get added into the gun violence index. You know who doesn't get added? People who slit their own wrists don't get added to the stabbing stats. Guns are the only one we do this with. But because we do this, they're able to manipulate the data. So I actually went into the Whisker system today, and I pulled up all of the data, and I went back to 2018. And the reason I went back to 2018 is I wanted you to have a few different years of data to go through. Because here's the truth. At no point at all are people under the age of 18 primarily killed by firearms in this country. That just isn't true. I went over some of that data with you yesterday, but I didn't get deep into the woods with it because I didn't have time. Today, we're going to go a little bit deeper, just so you understand. Now, if you missed it yesterday, go back and listen to the podcast or watch the live stream on Rumble. It'll be in the 5 o'clock hour. I think did I start it at 5 o'clock on that one? Do you remember? I think I might have started it at 5. So just find the beginning of the 5 o'clock hour. I think that's when I got into the data, if not 4:30. Okay, so this is important for people to understand. So if this is something you've been hearing, this is something you've been concerned about, you've been looking for answers on, or if you're somebody who's fallen for it and believed it, even if you still are not interested in getting rid of constitutional rights, this will help you because this is how they manipulate the data to push an agenda. They have to lie to you. The anti-gun groups have to deceive you and they have to lie to you. It is the reason that they are constantly doing it. They never argue from an actual statistical fact. They always argue with emotion and manipulated data. We've talked about this countless times on how they manipulate, how they classify a mass shooting and they sometimes accept one definition if it helps them. Other times they don't accept that definition because it doesn't provide good data for who the shooter looks like, what's the color of their skin, what's their political affiliations, that sort of thing. They always are constantly scheming to manipulate the data in a way that they can present their argument to you in order to convince you using emotion. They're lying. So once again, we'll get into the data here in this next segment, but no, violence with guns is not the leading cause of death of American children. That is a lie. I'll prove it to you next on 95.3 MNC.
Casey Hendrickson, 95.3.
What's happening throughout the area. I'm Laura Smith.
And I'm John Zimney, plus the top news, traffic, and weather first thing Friday morning on 95.3 MNC.
No, gun violence is not the leading cause of death of American children. That is a lie. It's not a spin. It's a flat-out lie. They are intentionally deceiving you. So here's what I did. I went to the Center for Disease Control, and I'm using their data since everybody's saying it's the CDC. It's the CDC that now says gun violence has surpassed automobile accidents as the number one cause of death for Americans, young Americans, I should say, children in the United States. And that's for the year 2020. Okay, we don't have 2021 stats yet. You don't get that until the fall. So I wanted to use the CDC's data. I contemplated debunking this with the FBI's data, but let's compare apples to apples here. Let's just actually go to the CDC's website and look at the data that they're publishing and that they're promoting and that every other news outfit around the country is promoting and see if it's actually true. Shocker, it's not. Now, I know that I gave you some of that data yesterday, but I want to get into the woods here just a little bit. I created a spreadsheet. So what I did is I went to the CDC Whisker system. So the Whisker system it's basically a database graph tool that they have. It's a very good tool. I wish that more bureaucracies had this tool, to be perfectly honest with you. You can go into the data and you can filter the data by age, by cause of death, custom date ranges, and that sort of thing, which you have to do in order to get the accurate data. Because if you don't, the CDC loves doing this really weird thing. This is how they play with data. And they did this with COVID too. They'll go, 0 years of age to 14, and then they'll go 15 years of age to 25. And then they'll try and tell you that, see, everybody under the age of 17 has died from a gun wound when they're including much older people in that data. So you have to do the custom age range, which I did. So here's what we ended up doing. I just wanted to start off because the CDC gets to this number by going 0 to 19 years old. Obviously, 18 and 19-year-olds are not kids. Okay, they shouldn't be counted in child gun violence stats, period. Nor should suicides. But it is important that we look at this data. So in 2018, okay, car accidents killed from 0 to 19 years old. Car accidents killed 3,619 19 and younger people. Gun homicides were 1,831. Gun suicides were 1,297. So for 0 to 19 years old in 2018, the total number of gun homicides and gun suicides do not surpass the number of car accident deaths. So let's go to the next year, 2019. Again, age 0 to 19 years old. Car accidents, 3,587. Gun homicides, 2,023. Gun suicides, 1,167. Once again, if you total the gun homicides and gun suicides, you do not equal the number of deaths from automobile accidents in the year 2019 for those up to the age of 19 years old. So let's look at 2020, which is the year that everybody is talking about, okay? Car accidents, 3,988. Gun homicides, 2,811. Big jump in gun homicides for 0 to 19 years old in 2020. COVID lockdowns, riots, all of that stuff are involved, okay? Gun suicides, also an increase from the previous year, 1,293. Now, for 2020, if you add age 0 to 19 years old, if you add gun homicides and gun suicides together, then by about 100, a little bit more than that, then you have more gun deaths for 0 to 19 years old than car accident fatalities in 2020. Now, again, let's look at their terminology here. They're using gun violence, which they're including suicide. Remember, in 2020, for 0 to 19 years old, there were 3,988 automobile fatalities for that age group. There was 2,811 gun homicides. So over 1,000 less people were murdered with a firearm in 2020 than were killed in a car accident, according to the CDC's own data. Now, again, that's from 0 to 19 years old. So we're including two age brackets there of adults, right? So that's how they manipulate the data. Now, let's look at the data as it's supposed to be, which is 0 to 17 years old. If we're going to be talking about minors, okay, we're going to be talking about children, which is the headline word that they've been using. There's a few that have said kids and teens. There's a few that have done that, so it's plausible deniability. But let's just look at the number as it's supposed to be based on most of the news stories, which is minors, okay? Those who under the age of 18. In 2018, car accidents killed 2,201. Gun homicides, 864. Gun suicides, 725. If you add gun homicides and suicides together for those under the age of 18, you do not get close to the number of car fatalities. Go to the next year in 2019. Car accidents, 2,228, slight increase from the previous year. Gun homicides are 938. Gun suicides are 657. And again, if you add gun homicides and gun suicides together for those under the age of 18, you do not come close to the number of under 18 who died in a car accident. Now let's look at 2020, which is the year that everybody is talking about. Don't play my music yet. You wait till I'm done. 2020. Under the age of 18, car accidents killed 2,462 kids, okay? Gun homicides killed 1,376, a dramatic jump over the previous year. Nobody's denying that. Gun suicides also increased dramatically, 721 over the previous year. If you add, for under 18 years old, for the year 2020, if you add gun homicides and gun suicides, you're still almost 400 deaths short of the total who were killed in automobile accidents, which means the only way that the CDC and the anti-gun groups and the federal government who's pushing this narrative because they control the CDC, the only way they can even get to the number where gun deaths surpass automobile accidents for people under the age of 20 is to include suicides and to add in 18 and 19-year-olds, and it only happens in 1 year and 1 year alone, and that is 2020. So under the age of 18, absolutely not. Car accidents are still far more likely to take your life than a firearm. It's not even close. And beyond that, if you start looking at some of the other stuff that take the lives of people who are under the age of 18, other accidents not related to motor vehicles are still far more likely to take your life. But that's not what is being discussed. That's not how it's being presented to all of you. All of this data is available on the CDC's Whiskers system. The Whiskers system, again, is WISQARS. I will link to it in the daily show prep today. So if you follow me online or on Truth Social, you'll be able to see it. If you're on Telegram, you'll be able to see it as well. They are lying to you. Firearms are not even remotely close, the leading cause of death for under 18 in this country. Period. End of story. Anybody who tells you otherwise is lying to you, and the CDC's own data backs up my evidence, and the CDC is the one pushing the lie.